Trails from Zero originally released in 2010 in Japan on the PSP. To say the least, it's been a long time coming. I'm happy to say that the wait has been worth it. Not only is this one of the best entries in the greater Legend of Heroes saga, but it's also been lovingly remastered for the modern era. Now, before I dive into the story, I want to give a brief primer for where Trails from Zero fits into the larger Legend of Heroes timeline, as the release order obviously is very different from Japan. Now, the first 3 games were in the Trails in the Sky arc, or the Liberal arc. Next is where Trails from Zero, or the Crossbell arc, fits in. Now here it kind of overlaps with Trails from Cold Steel 1, as they take place in the same year and some of the story points overlap a little bit. And then after that is Trails of Cold Steel, or the Erebonia arc. Now with that all out of the way, let's dive into the story here. In Trails from Zero, you play as Lloyd Banning, a police detective who's recently joined the SSS, or the Special Support Section. He's joined by 3 other members, Elliot McDowell, Tio Plato, and Randy Orlando. Now this was sort of established as a PR ploy for the police department to gain some goodwill within Crossbell, the town that this game takes place in. Now the Bracer Guild has been doing tasks all over town, is very popular with the people of the city, and the police department wants a piece of that pie. Now, most chapters in the game are centered around solving one particular case or one particular mystery, which makes the story really easy to follow. Now, there is a greater plot boiling in the background that builds throughout the game, but I'll let you discover that one for yourself. Where I think Trails from Zero shines from a story perspective is its relatively small scope. Your team is small and you're together from the very beginning of the game, so you get a lot of time to grow together and learn more about all these different characters. Other JRPGs can suffer when the party is really big and some characters don't get the proper time to develop. That's not the case here. Now, most of the game does take place in Crossbell, just one city, so you get to know the area well and all the people very well. Now, don't worry, you do get to venture to other areas, but for the most part, it does take place in Crossbell. Now, I have played entries in the Trails in the Sky and Trails of Cold Steel series, but to me, Trails from Zero has had the strongest story so far. Structure-wise, Trails from Zero is a pretty traditional turn-based JRPG. You have plenty of story moments that set the stage at the beginning of each chapter, you'll have time to take on side quests from your HQ to earn money and extra rewards, and of course, plenty of time exploring environments and getting into combat. Now, the combat itself is very similar to the rest of the Trails series. It's a turn-based one, but also deals with a lot of proximity. Certain attacks have to be a certain distance away from enemies to execute them. The other thing that I really like is that you can see the turn order at all times. I don't know why every turn-based JRPG doesn't have that. I love it. It just gives you more information to plot out your strategy. Now, each of your character has a specialty in combat. For example, Lloyd and Randy are melee fighters that specialize in taking damage and canceling enemy attacks. Tio is a caster that deals big damage, and Ellie is the party's healer. Now, I will say I played most of the game on turbo mode, so a lot of the footage you're probably going to see is in fast forward, so I apologize if that's a little jarring to watch. That said, I loved this feature. I was able to speed through trash enemies while exploring dungeons or just in environments, and leveling and grinding was actually pretty fun. That said, boss battles were much more interesting, and I really had to take my time and plot out my strategy, so I typically turned turbo mode off for those. The other thing that is here that has been in all the other Trails games is the quartz system. Essentially, each character has a certain number of slots that you can slot in quartz. And what are quartz? Well, they give characters that they are equipped on special abilities, but also stat increases. There's a lot of depth to this system, and it's really fun to experiment, so feel free to do that when you play. Now, to go back to turbo mode for a bit, I have to say this really does a lot for this particular port of Trails from Zero. It makes what otherwise is a pretty outdated game feel much more enjoyable. It makes traveling around the world that much faster, although there is a fast travel system that you unlock early on that allows you to travel around the town of Crossbell much faster. Now, the side quests are relatively mundane, but turbo mode allows you to just blast through them quickly to get the huge benefits like extra items and money. This can also make the combat feel a little trivial at times, but it gives you that dopamine hit of leveling up and getting new abilities more often. So in a weird way, it just makes it feel that much better. Now, you can toggle this on and off with a press of a button, so if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. Visually speaking, Trails from Zero is not an impressive game. Heck, it wasn't even that impressive when it came out in 2010. However, the HD facelift does help a lot. A lot of the textures are much crisper, and it just looks better overall. I also like the high quality character portraits. It really helps sell their emotion. Not to mention that there's voice acting. Now, it's only in Japanese, however, it does help you get more immersed in the story and helps you connect with these characters because you can actually get a sense of their emotion and what they're trying to convey. Now, one important thing to note is that the PS4 version is graphically inferior to the Switch and PC versions, weirdly enough. Just to kind of get a glimpse of what I'm talking about, here's a side-by-side comparison. From what I understand, NIS America more or less just upscaled the Vita version of this game up to the PlayStation 4 standards, whereas the PC and Switch ports were done by PC modding wizard Durante. The new textures and quality of life additions in these new ports will not be included in the PS4 version. So if you have the option to, I would recommend avoiding the PS4 version. The Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero has been a long time coming for Western audiences, but the wait has been worth it. Not only is this simply the best entry in the entire Trails saga, but these ports to new consoles, great visual remasters, and quality of life additions breathe new life into an otherwise pretty old game. Even for those that played the Geofront release, I really believe that this version is worth replaying for all the quality of life additions and new textures. For Trails fans, this is obviously a must-play game as it's the missing link in the saga, but for RPG fans, you should also find a lot to enjoy here too. Now, for those that are worried, you don't have to have played any of the other games in the bigger saga, so don't listen to those hardcore fans that saying you need to play the other 7 games before you can start here, because you totally don't. Now, you're easily looking at 40 plus hours here, but probably a little less if you play the entire game in turbo mode like I did. Now, this isn't the only awesome JRPG releasing in September, so if you want to hear about another one, be sure to check out my impressions for the Diofield Chronicle. It's flying under a lot of people's radars, and you definitely need to check it out. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming JRPG videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.